everybody. Welcome back to the Kentucky Doomscrollers Podcast. I am joined today by a very interesting guest to talk about a topic that's not being widely covered in mainstream news. However, it has some pretty serious national implications. My guest today, I call him Cappie. He is a 39-year police veteran in a major metropolitan area. He's currently retired and living far away from all that entails, very intentionally, and has a photography business and volunteers his time and brings an interesting perspective to the current case that we're going to look at in Texas, not just from a law enforcement perspective, but from the perspective of somebody that believes in individual freedom and liberty, but also that there has to be rules, borders, some might say, to the limits of people's behavior and movement. So please, I appreciate you very much coming on. I know it was not easy working all the technology out, and that is always the biggest hurdle for most people. So you're not alone in that. If there's anything I missed, Cappie, please go ahead and fill us in.
No, everything's good and everything was accurate.
All right, fair enough. I didn't want to jump right into it. Can you see my screen cap?
On the phone, yes,
Okay. All right.
barely.
Perfect. Well, I'm basically going to be reading from it. I'm pulling news here from an account called The Vigilant Fox, which I know sounds like a pretty silly name, but he is a verified reporter and always seems to be like at the front of all of this breaking news, including this top 10 stories that they chose not to tell you this week. And then usually links to the various articles regarding those situations. We had a very veiled threat against President Trump. Cap, I'm not sure if you heard about that. Probably not, as you're intentionally not clued into politics on purpose.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised at it, but yeah.
they're just not subtle. They're just not subtle at all here. So Tucker Carlson did a piece. I guess for people that don't know, a brief summary would be that due to the unprecedented, unfettered migration across our southern border, not just of people seeking asylum from war-torn countries, but groups of young fighting age single men from various countries, including Africa and Asian countries as well. There's currently a Supreme Court case that was just ruled on yesterday that essentially defended the federal government's ability to override the fact that the Texas National Guard has begun to put up actual borders at our borders. How dare they? Well, we've had Oklahoma governor going on Fox News and saying that they were going to send National Guard to Texas. There are currently 25 states. There are currently 25 states that have governors that are willing to send troops to Texas. So I guess my question for you in all of that, there's only a million questions, right? From a law enforcement perspective, I got to imagine that for police officers, those with morality and conscience and a sense of duty, that this for them has got to be a very tense time, not knowing how individual law departments are going to support one another. And with that in mind, we were just talking about departments sending cops from other cities to larger events. So I guess my question is, given the current state of things, if law enforcement is ordered to defend the federal government at the risk of shooting their brothers, their cousins, their neighbors in the Texas National Guard, then where does that leave us, essentially? Where does that leave us as a country?
I think inevitably it's going to happen. But I don't know if it's going to be law enforcement against law enforcement. I think what's going to happen is if there's going to be any pushback, it's going to be from the commanders in the military who are being ordered by the federal government to take action and against law enforcement, law enforcement, local law enforcement, state law enforcement.
Right.
You're essentially looking at a civil war. The people in the military tend to be, they swore an oath to the Constitution. And when the Constitution isn't being upheld, I think their loyalties, at least some of them, the ones that don't want to end up in the Pentagon, get political positions, are going to push back. And I think that unless a resolution is reached, my personal feeling is that what you're going to see unit against unit in the military standing off against each other.
Wild.
That's just what my gut tells me. Texas, and the federal government.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but quickly, you mentioned something earlier in conversation, and now I don't remember the number. Isn't it true that the number of gun permits in Texas makes it one of the largest standing armies in the world? Did you say that earlier? Am I misremembering the way you spoke?
I don't have the details on that. I've read different places where they say that the actual military, the National Guard in Texas, is equal to like the 5th or the 8th or something. I don't have the details.
Right.
Largest standing army in the world. So, they have the tanks, they have the armored vehicles, they have an air force that they're quite capable. So and then if they have the support of other states, it just reminds me of something that I read in the history book from 1850 something. It's very similar. But of course, and of course you don't have the slavery issue here, right. But what you do have is state rights, and that was a big part of that original Civil War conflict was state rights. And I think that the states need to wrestle some of that back from the federal government, because the federal government just wants to dictate everything. And they're corrupt. They're clearly corrupt. And anybody who's not blind can see that that's what the situation is in the government right now. Right. It is just geared for corruption. There's no accountability. There's no repercussions on elected officials. On individual ones that go against the norm, you can call it norm, they're the ones that have difficult times.
Right. Well, that's this is the list of states that have pledged support, confirmed to an updated list of states claiming support of Texas in their stance. Florida, Virginia, Georgia, North Dakota, South Dakota. In fact, Kristi Noem is in Texas today. That was a news clip I saw earlier. Tennessee, Alabama, Montana, Idaho, Utah, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Louisiana. There are also rumors within the military, and I have a few people that I speak with regularly and check in with for these types of things. And the millings and rumors in the armed forces is that if they are told to go and that they're told to go to Texas to be against Texas, that a vast majority of them do not plan on going to Texas against Texas. They plan on going in support and going AWOL. Like they're just, the guys that are in there are so fed up with the woke bullshit, with these trans people getting promoted because they're trans, because they're mentally. Anyway, they're so fed up with the bullshit that if they're called to go to Texas, they don't plan on going to fight Texas. They plan on going in support of Texas. So I fail to see how in an election year, a civil war is going to pan out, except to say that I think the federal government is doing it intentionally, so that they can declare martial law. But again, I don't know how many of the guys are really going to stand in defense of the federal government at this point. I don't
Well,
think it'll be a lot.
that's what they have to take into consideration. That kind of goes back to my point. You know, the insurrection isn't a bunch of people with cardboard signs outside of Congress. The insurrections want to occur from inside the military, and it's going to depend on how far they want the military to go. Yeah, the difference now is that, you know, even the people in the military have access to what's going on.
Right.
So they, you know, it goes against their brain and why they even joined. You know, they're certainly not going to. I mean, they're certainly not going to. I don't believe go up against U.S. citizens,
Right.
especially, you know, like National Guards, you know, people that, you know, are there to support, you know, the U.S. military.
Right.
You know, they're friends. They're of like minds.
Right.
Who's not of like minds are the crazy elite people in the federal government.
Who dare
They
have
they
the
just
nerve?
they not only don't understand the normal citizen, you know, just the regular old folks that work their whole lives and want to be left alone.
Mm.
They don't understand the capacity to push back because we're all law-abiding citizens.
Right.
You know, we don't want to go against the government, but
Right.
you can only push people into a corner for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, again, the military, the real turmoil is going to come in the military, and
Right.
they gotta really be careful, because as soon as they gotta understand, if they put those orders out, depending on what those orders are entail,
Okay.
then there's going to be massive desertions. There's just going to be people that are going to be saying, no, we're not doing it. Again, you know, at what level in the military? I don't know, because you always have the ambitious few that, as I said earlier, they want to go in the Pentagon. They think that they're going to go.
Basically, if you're in the military at this point, you have to either be willing to wear a dress and claim to be trans, or you have to be disabled in some way to get promoted. There's absolutely no merit based anything within the military. It's all woke based bullshit, and it's bled into it so much that, like, even the military is sick of the military on just the common everyman level. Again, except for those that are politically ambitious, but I find it interesting.
Well, they started to weed out, you know, the real, I'm going to say, to call them rebels in the military with the COVID shots,
The vaccines, right?
the vaccines.
Yeah.
You know, people that are you know,
Ethical,
that
smart.
ethically committed to not taking it, you know,
Right.
for what has proven to be now for good
Right.
reason.
Yeah. This is
You know, they got
rumble
rid of them.
only, so we're
They're the
allowed.
troublemakers. They're the non-compliant. And
Right.
in the military, I mean, you have to have people that are going to follow orders. So
Right.
you don't want them in the military. And then, you know, even if there was just some kind of a hearing, I believe, and they were asking Secretary of Defense or something, I don't know, about, you know, about now that the COVID, you know, the threat is gone,
Right.
you know, and there, you know, will those people be called back or asked to come back?
I would even go back.
You know, and you know, basically, so well, no, we're not going to do that. that, even though there's a shortage, supposedly there's some
Oh,
kind of
there is. And it's
shortage.
particularly the percentage of white males that have gone into the military is down 48% since the COVID vaccine. I find it's interesting because like we can say this here on Rumble, which is, but we could not have this conversation on YouTube. If we had this conversation on YouTube, it would get banned. You still can't talk openly about this, but the thing with the military that I think people need to understand is the idea that the COVID vaccine mandate was somehow new or unprecedented for the military is absolute nonsense. They've been shooting these guys up with experimental vaccines for decades and blaming it on their mental state, all of the neurological problems that they have coming home, and they give it different labels. But at the bottom line is a lot of these guys are dealing with really when I tell you debilitating, Cappie, it's heartbreaking. Like it's one that you just wish you could help these people, but you can't help everybody. But it's like they were just, the government did them dirty. You signed your body over to the government and the government did you dirty. And now they're going to tell you that everything you're experiencing is all in your head, including all the physical symptoms. It's all a result of PTSD. And that's that. And I'm like, this is not the way to get good men into the military. This is not the way. I think in short, kind of like to move towards closing. I am of the conspiracy mind, of course, so tinfoil hat on. I think that the federal government is instigating this with the cooperation of the deep state rhinos to get a civil war so that they can do martial law, so that they can essentially, we end up with no elections in 2024. Do you think I'm super far off with that? And we have like 3 or 4 minutes.
I haven't really given it much thought, to be
No.
honest.
It's fair.
No,
Is it outside the realm of government?
From where I'm sitting here in Wyoming, it just seems like the government does some really silly damn things, and it's either gross incompetence or it is intentional. It is intentional.
Which is worse.
The government has done nothing to show any appreciation for the military. Mm-hmm. And if you're a veteran, so I would advise anyone that's even thinking or considering the military. I understand that sometimes it's, you feel as though it's a career you could advance in. You want to be a patriot. A patriot for who, I'm not sure. If you want to stand by your president and Congress, I guess that's okay. Mm-hmm. But just talk to some veterans. Talk to some veterans who have been in the military in actual battles, who were in Afghanistan, were in Iran. It's just, and see how they're being treated, because it's absolute bullshit to think that you're going to get treated any better.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know. I don't know. I jokingly sometimes say, I bought myself a rifle, and basically, it's so that when the blue helmets come,
mm-hmm.
They're
already here.
Inevitably, that's what's going to happen, because you're going to have a fractured military because of the internal turmoil. Who's going to side with who? And the only thing that could be done is that a UN force would come in and try to, settle everything, settle the civil war, to the benefit of who? I don't know.
Well, we can get into this discussion another time, but I am going to drop for people that Operation Steadfast Defender 2024 kicks off very, very soon here in the United States, where they are wargaming military exercise and moving troops and heavy military equipment all around the country. But I could get into that. It's a podcast for another time. So Cappie, you're an outdoor and portrait photographer, quite talented, if I do say so myself, an appreciation of the finer things in arts. If it's to your liking, I'd like to link your website if people wanted to check out your photography. Some of my favorite wedding picture, Pete and I's favorite wedding picture, is still the picture you took of us dancing. Our favorite wedding picture. We had a wedding photographer, folks, and a lot of people took pictures, and they were great pictures. And I love the photographer. By far, that is the best picture, my favorite picture from our wedding. So
I
I
know
want
which
to
one you're
thank you for
talking
that.
about.
Yep,
Yeah,
you
I know which
do.
one you're talking
Yeah.
about. That was a good turn of luck right there.
It was
Um,
absolutely beautiful.
I probably know a little more about photography than I do about politics, but and to be fair, these are just like gut feelings that I
Yeah, just
have.
opinions.
Just
We're just
having
opinions.
worked for a big city government for 38 years, having a pretty damn good understanding of human nature and the way people think and what their needs and desires are.
Mm.
I apologize that I'm just short on details. Again, a few years back, I just decided to basically back away from politics, uh, as well as professional sports and anything that's going to like mess with my head.
Right.
Because I just, maybe I'm just getting old and
Well,
I just want
wildlife
to be
photography.
left alone, and I'm willing to do what is necessary to be left alone.
Yeah. Wildlife photography provides you with ample opportunity to be out in nature, and Wyoming is a gorgeous state. I do hope to be able to visit soon, but if people want to check out the video from a few videos ago, I don't know that I would fly at this moment, but a road trip to Wyoming sounds beautiful. We'd love to come out and see us. So, all right,
No,
with
I
that, folks.
jokingly say that if we keep the riff raft out with our weather in Wyoming,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
arguably that's why you get a lot of people going to Florida. But I like to joke with my friends from Florida.
Yeah, now I wouldn't want to be in Florida right now geopolitically either. I think Wyoming is probably a pretty wise choice. So all right, well, I will link to your website below if people wanted to check that out. He's a very talented photographer, and I appreciate you taking the time. And if that, I'm just going to say goodbye to the people that are still watching. Thank you. Please like, comment, share, follow, all of the wonderful things to help boost this content in the algorithm so that we can continue to have just normal discussions with people to get people's feeling where they're at in these high,
Stressful times.
yeah, stressful times. And when we have these kind of stories that are breaking out, it's kind of good to touch base with other folks. And it turns out that you're not crazy, and you might have to put your tinfoil hat on for portions of it, but the goal here is to bring real information to people and to have a discussion. So thank you all for hanging in there, and I appreciate it. And thank you, Cappie.